Hello and welcome to the Comedian's Paradise. This is where we speak to mavericks and stormbreakers on the comedy scene. Now today's guest is Mags McHugh. She's been to Ireland on the comedy scene. She's had fish and chips in the best Irish fish and chip shop in Dublin. She's performed everywhere. She has worked in mental health. She is a hilarious lady. She's a lady that has a deep understanding of the human mind and is a hilarious individual. She has a lot of stories to tell. She's a magnificent comedian. Please welcome Mags McHugh.
I think you may have had a bang on the head, but hello. That was a bit excessive. I've gone a bit red. I think that was a little bit over the top. Anyway, we're here. Let's just crack on. Yeah. How are you? Are you okay?
I'm okay. So just say, listen, the next guest, she's all right. She's cool.
That'll
Here
do.
we go, Mags
Yeah.
McHugh.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. That will do just as well. All of that build up. It's like, oh dear. Okay.
So for anyone that doesn't know about you and hasn't heard your name before, tell us about yourself. Like, how did you get into comedy? What is your comedy story? And something that's I found very, very interesting. And a friend of mine, Don, says that you were looking at doing a mental health program for comedians. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Oh, I was thinking about it. I didn't know you knew that. Yeah. Well, I started doing comedy kind of in error. I was living in Ireland. I'd gone home to Ireland. I was looking after my parents. My parents lived in Dublin, and I went home for a while and ended up staying to look after two elderly people who loved each other but didn't always get on that well. That's two in their late 80s. You can imagine. Well, you can only imagine. And I found it quite stressful, looking after people, being there all the time. And I had a little chat with myself because I work in mental health and I'd had to sort of give up my business and other work I was doing to do this. And I had a chat with myself one day and thought, I'm going to go under with the stress of looking after two people around the clock. What do I need to do? And I treated myself as if I were a client in mental health. So I thought, right, I need to do something. So I learned two things. I learned to make pottery on a wheel, which I can now do and it looks like a pot at the end of it. So if you've never done it, it's a lovely thing to do. I did a weekend course with a guy called Aidan Killian, which was a 2-day course. And at the weekend, and then we did a gig at the end of it. And I got someone in to look after mum and dad while I was away. And it meant one night a week, I carried on doing that. And I went to a room which was mainly empty in Blackrock. And I did comedy there to mainly comedians. Very rarely was there an audience, occasionally. So it was very silent. And I got so used to silence that I did that for about 2 years before I did a real gig, with more people in a room where there was an audience, where people had maybe paid in. And I was so used to silence that when people laughed, I got off the stage really quickly because I got a fright. That was my beginning of comedy, really. It took me quite a while. Even now, when people laugh, I always get a little bit of a shock, a bit surprised, and I have a little adrenaline goosebump feeling of like, oh God, they're laughing. Because I never take it for granted because, it can go badly wrong. That's it. Is that enough? Do you want to know more?
No, okay. So
I did the wheel. Did it, of course, then got going. But I did initially, I was using, once I was up and running, I realised there was nobody in a wheelchair at a comedy gig and people kind of get ignored in terms of accessibility. So I started borrowing my mum and dad's wheelchair and I would do stand-up comedy in a wheelchair. And I'd stand up halfway through and say, I don't need it. I'd actually pushed around. And it was kind of a reference to domestic abuse. I've experienced that. But it was also a reference to accessibility and the fact that nobody in a wheelchair can complain or anything because they've not climbed up a flight of stairs. And I did that for several years until Tony Ferns, who had that gig at the Halfpenny Inn in Dublin, he moved his gig to the ground floor, and I helped a woman who does use a wheelchair, called Saoirse Smith, write her first 5 minutes. And then once she was up and running and able to do it, I stopped using the wheelchair. And I think comedy can be a real, excuse the pun here, but it can be a real vehicle for change. It can make people think. And in that 5 minutes that I would do, I remember one guy at a comedy gig, he came downstairs and he said, I saw you, and I said to my mate, oh, fucking retard. I'm quoting him directly. He said, fucking retard. And I said, oh. And he said, and then you were funny. And now who's the fucking retard now? And he pointed at himself. And in that moment, I realised, and he said, I'm a journalist, and I think I'm quite intelligent. And it was quite an extraordinary thing to see. In 5 minutes, you can get people to see someone go from a woman in a wheelchair they've got sympathy for to a woman who's actually quite funny, and then she doesn't need a chair, and you have that little, it's like a little story. Does that make sense? Anyway, it made a difference, and it made people aware of accessibility. I never use the wheelchair now because I've made it happen.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you want to ask me about that? Because a lot of people are quite shocked by it, but I don't care really.
I mean, you do what you do. I mean, there's a lot of different styles of comedy. People do all sorts to get the laughs. You do you. As long as someone's not doing something that I feel is a bit, okay, so I had an incident at one of the shows that I run, and it was a heckle night. It was a bit fishy, but you can expect it. But there was an act called, so it was a lovely little cafe that I used to run a gig in called Arthur's Cafe, and the girl was about 17 or 18, and that she was playing with one of the comedians, and there's this guy in his 40s, no 50s I think, 50s or 60s. He's been doing comedy for about 4 or 5 years. He's on the open mic circuit, and he goes to the girl and calls her fat. And he just kept on, he kept on going around that line, and he really pushed it. And then people were saying, like, you're in America, there's certain things you can't, you may be able to get over there, but you can't say it here. And then he didn't apologise to her at the end or anything like that, but there was a really iffy feeling throughout the whole of the gig.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's all right to push the boundaries and to take risks and to do all of that. But at the end of the day, and it's like Joe Staunton said, it's about the audience and making sure they have a good time. I'm very much into that. I'm okay with you taking risks and pushing the button a bit.
Yeah.
But if you've made a mistake, apologise, move on, and try and rectify the situation. We all make mistakes. But what I don't like is if you, your job is to make people laugh.
Yeah.
If you've not done that, you've not done your job. It's pure and simple. Don't say, oh, they're sensitive or that. You've got to know how to communicate it. You can take risks, but you need to find a way to communicate to that audience. Take responsibility. Don't get defensive. And if you offended someone, okay, apologise a bit. And if it's warranted, what that guy did to the girl there is warranted, because she's quite a young girl as well. And it's
no. With me, the wheelchair thing was about holding up a mirror to anybody that's offended by it and saying, well, there's no access. Nobody in a wheelchair ever gets up. I mean, I literally used to carry this wheelchair up and down flights of stairs, and I did it for 2 years, and it really made people think differently and laugh, because obviously I was doing psychic reading. It was batshit stuff I was saying. It was funny, but it was about accessibility. It was about how we treat people when they're in a wheelchair. We treat people like they're stupid. And that, in fact, the man actually came up and said it, and he had admitted, he thought, imagine saying it to somebody, but he did anyway. And if people didn't get it, I was okay with that, because I wanted to use it in the way Mark Thomas, a comedian I really admire, in the way that he uses comedy to make people think. I want my comedy to make people think differently or challenge perception around things as well. Anyway,
it's very good. It's very clever what he does. I know he makes a lot of jokes about I remember I watched him in Stoneleigh, and he was doing his tour show, and he's making jokes of the Conservatives saying like little things. Like he would make little points,
Mm,
really pinpoint the stupidity of the things they do.
yeah.
But yeah, he is an interesting guy. But I've also mentioned it a few times, and I do get. He's a character, isn't he, Mark, as well? Brilliant
Yeah.
comic, like the stuff he's done, like exposing oil people for
I
being
know.
dodgy
He's
people, and all.
amazing.
He's done
I
all
know.
sorts of crazy things.
I
That man,
really, yeah, he
which is
has.
brilliant.
He's amazing TV. He's done amazing stuff. I actually met him and gigged with him not so long ago. I made a complete fool of myself. Absolute fool. Have you ever met somebody you really admire and you plan to just say, it's lovely to see you, and I really love your stuff? That's what I planned to say. I didn't. I talked at him for about 10 minutes about every gig I'd ever seen him at. I told him I used to be a nurse, or I was a nurse, and that I wasn't really very kind of, I didn't have a lot of street cred because I listened to the Archers. But then I saw he was on, and I got everybody that worked in the operating theatre to come with me to see his show. And then I had street cred, and I went on and on at him, and a poor man just stood there frozen. And then he went, "You're lovely." And I went, "Yes, Mark, sometimes I am lovely. Sometimes I'm not lovely. Oh God, even now it's mortifying." And then I went into the next gig I'd seen him at, and when I'd seen him in Edinburgh, I went on and on. And all the time I could see him like trying to, like I do when I work with a client and they bump into me years later, and it's like, please stop telling me how great it is. It's just too much. And then I went to the toilet and I just screamed. I got in the toilet and I went, like this high pitched noise of like, oh my God. Luckily, I did all right at the gig, but I imagine if he sees me again, he'd avoid me and I'd avoid me, really, to be honest. It was so bad. So like embarrassing looking back on it. Anyway, I won't do that again. It's not that many people I admire that much. Have you ever done it? God, it's all...
Um, Let me look. Yeah, I embarrassed Jon Snow, Kit Harington. I asked him that, like, "Are you Jon Snow?" He said, "Not right now," and I just said nothing else. And then what else was a bit embarrassing? Who? I see famous people. Yeah, I've done it a few times. Not on the podcast, trying to get people on, I get a bit nervous because each person I get on is someone that I think is very interesting, and I
Oh,
think has a very interesting angle. So all the time that I'm quite cautious about how I act, and I know that each person is different. So like with Katie Copstick, I'm trying to
yeah,
get her on, and I really want to hear her views, which are quite strong. I'm a
yeah.
bit nervous about how I chat to her, and you're a bit
Oh,
like, are you coming across as fake admin? You want to be like real but polite and friendly, but you
yeah.
don't want to be like PR person. And
No.
also, some people don't react well to it. Like I've tried to get Aboriginal comedians on a podcast, and I'm not being able to get anyone at the moment. So it's yeah, it's a lot of interesting people I try and get on a podcast, and each time I try and get them on a podcast, I'm a bit cautious about how I act. But
Oh,
also, there's one or two times where people haven't been all right, and I should have stepped in a bit. But
oh. It's
it
so
is what it
interesting,
is.
isn't
And
it?
also, if it
Yeah.
hasn't gone well, it I get a bit nervous about that as well. About, oh, okay, I don't really think this is good for going on, and I'm a bit cautious about how I communicate there. So yeah, all the time.
Why did you ask me? I wondered that because like I'm not that famous. I'm not famous at all. Like nobody knows who I am. I'm just doing bits of comedy.
Well, you've got a very interesting angle. You're working in mental health, so you can give an insight on like what goes on in it, and I'm also interested in the relationship it has with your approach to comedy because there are a lot of people in comedy that are there's a lot of wild characters in it, but there's a lot of people that are a little bit in the terms of their faculties a bit sensitive, and
A bit on.
also
It's
there's a
quite a
lot
lot
of
of.
drugs with a lot of stand-ups as well. So I'm
Yeah.
that's why that's
Okay. All right.
yeah.
Well, so to cover some of those things then, in terms of the mental health thing, um, there are quite a lot of people who are quite poorly in comedy, and I often get phone calls from people who are asking for help. After a gong show, for example, if someone's been voted off or they've not gone through in a competition, they'll often get in contact and I'll spend a bit of time with them, make sure they're okay. And I think in the past, I've probably helped people who've been bullied online, who've been cancelled, who are really struggling. I've often got in contact with them and distracted, got people to put other stuff up so that that person gets a break online. I've done bits like that because also when I'm doing comedy and I'm on stage, I'm always aware that the person in the audience. There was a time once it was in Dublin, and a man shouted out, "I'm a virgin," and
Oh,
I know, and I could have really roasted him. You said something about not roasting you, and I could have really gone completely after it before we got on to do this, and I wouldn't roast you. I wouldn't. I think you're great, but I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I was aware that I could have gone in on him completely about the. I'm getting a lot of feedback here. I can hear myself, but is that okay?
yeah, it's fine.
Okay. So anyway, he shouts that I'm a virgin, and I immediately thought, is he okay? He said that. So I responded with, and sometimes people don't surprise me. And it got a big laugh. And I went, you just carry on doing whatever you're doing. And I was really nice to him and kind of diffused it a bit. So I got the laugh. There was a big laugh, but I could have gone in about all sorts of things to do with virgins and made fun. But I went on to something else. I'm just aware of the sensitivity and the wellness of somebody that might be in the audience. Equally,
For
yeah.
yeah,
Go on, question.
for a guy, that's a big sort of ego damage. But for a girl, is it as big a damage for them to say something like that? Because I know that in
Well, he,
society, there are people that are very judgmental, and for the most part, if a guy hasn't had a lot of fun, the
yeah.
stigmas and them
Well,
themselves.
he was in the front and he shouted it out. So I was
Whoa.
aware
Okay, bloody hell.
it was a man. He yelled it. And I just said that sometimes I'm not surprised. People don't surprise me. And sometimes people don't surprise me. And it was a lovely response. I got a lovely, it doesn't sound funny now, but on the night it went well. But I was aware that he might be quite, I didn't know how he was. I think there's that line all the time that you want to have fun with the audience, but I don't want to make people poorly. And equally, when I'm in a green room, I've helped people who've been very poorly. And I've got them to GPs and I've got them all kinds of help that they needed. Because people can be quite unwell. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So do you find that a lot of comics, when they find out that you do mental health, talk to you a lot about things?
I have this kind of unfortunate ability that people will find me and talk to me. I can be on a train reading a
Oh,
book, nothing to do with comedy, nothing to do with anything, keeping my head down. And if there's somebody on the train who's got a long story about that their husband's just died or their wife's just died and their daughter died when she was 40. What happened yesterday, I was in Bath at Comedia. I was on the train and a woman said, can I sit here? And I said, yeah. And I just thought, I'm not going to chat. I've got work to do, whatever. And then she just gave me her life story. Grief stricken. I mean, people will tell me all kinds of stuff. They'll tell me about their bowels. I don't want to know about their bowels.
ha ha ha.
No, I can't begin to tell you. They'll tell me that they might want to kill somebody or that they've been sexually assaulted. I mean, sexually, abused or assaulted as a child. Like in my work, that's normal. That would be normal, that kind of stuff. But it seems in my everyday life, I have this capacity for people to tell stuff. And also I notice things. I've worked with thousands of people over the years and I've learned from all of them. So I notice them.
What makes you so? What got you into mental health? Can I say one thing that I noticed that I heard from Daniel O'Reilly, Dapper Laughs,
Yeah,
and yeah, thank you for introducing me to Heskey. That was an interesting chat with him,
good.
and yeah, I really hope him and Dapper Laughs really have a great event. But he
Okay.
said something about he was hooked on like drugs and alcohol,
Mm.
and he says a lot of that. I mean, if you're getting rid of that, that helps a lot. And he says that he couldn't really complain about having that if he was just hooked on drugs and alcohol.
Mm.
And he says once he started exercising, looking after himself, and you
Yeah.
still have that, then that's a good point to start. I think I butchered what he said, but he said something along those lines.
Yeah, no, that's sensible. I mean, when people are using drugs and or alcohol, they're both going to have an impact. and the brain, they're toxins, and your brain can't cope with that little lot. But often I find when I did this piece of work, you said what made me start. I started off because I was bullied when I was a nurse. I had a really, really bad experience at work, and I was signed off sick for quite a while. I sat in a deck chair for about 6 months in my living room. It's the only place I felt safe. And I ate Maltesers. That's what kept me alive. Maltesers and tea. I'm not recommending it as a diet, but that's what I did for about 6 months. And then one day I was sitting back as fit for work. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I've got to go back to work. This doctor signed a piece of paper, and I was a lot better, but I hadn't got some basics in place. And had I done these two things, had I learned to say no to overtime, for example, had I learned to ask for help when I needed it, those are the two things that would have really helped me. And I started then putting together a course that I thought would help, that would have helped me feel healthier. And I put those two things in place in terms of a course. And I went on to put that course together, and it developed. And in the end, years later, the NHS in England and the HSC, the Health Authority in Ireland, used it. And the Job Centre Plus, for example, with Pathways to Work, we did a pilot project in Derbyshire where I worked with 12 people on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, so 36 people a week for 6 weeks. Every 6 weeks I had 36 new people to learn from. And that course, all the evidence shows that the two things that make the biggest difference is if a person learns to say no and learns to ask for help. If you can get those two things in your life, it makes a massive difference. When I say saying no, I don't mean saying no and giving an excuse. You ask me to go to a party and I say no because this is happening and that's happening, and can you lend me money? No, because there's no because, just no, thanks for offering, but no, I won't be going. And being okay with doing it and being that kind of safe with it. Most people are really fearful of saying the word no. I think culturally in Ireland, we don't say it very much. We make excuses in my culture, and British culture also, there's a politeness. And we feel like saying no is a bad thing. So, yeah, I think those two things make the biggest difference. And obviously alcohol and drugs. If you can get yourself off those, that's good too. All things in moderation, I'd say. But I started drinking Dutch Barn. I did a competition recently and I got a bottle free as part of that. And I came home and drank some with Ribena. And I wouldn't recommend it with Ribena, but it's really nice. I like vodka. Anyway, yeah. So I'm not saying no to anything, but moderation. And I would say if you can't do moderation, then don't do it. Don't drink. Yeah. Yeah. So that was a long answer, really, but does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I definitely resonate with in terms of difficulty saying no. I for myself, and I want to ask you this question as well. For myself, sometimes it will happen. I'll be in a situation, I'll feel a bit fishy about it, but I'll feel uncomfortable and I'll say yes to it. But then I'll think about it for a couple of days and I'll process it and I'll be like, what the hell have I just agreed to? No. And then after I've had a thought about it, I say, no, sorry. I've had that happen that often happens a lot. I process what's happened or the situation and I think about it and I go, hold on, this is in no way okay. This is a load of nonsense. Why am I agreeing to this? And then I do it. But at the time, I don't process it right. And I'm not good at, I'm not, at the time I agree to it. And I'm like, what have I just agreed to?
So the bit
do you do something similar?
So the bit that's interesting there is at that moment where you say yes, we've gone into mental health stuff now, but it's grand if you're all right to do this now. The bit that's important is that at the moment you say yes, it's being aware of why are you saying yes. Is it about pleasing people? Is it about not having an awkwardness, not feeling safe to say no?
Yeah, those two.
Two. So those are the things to work on. And if you wanted to do a session or two away from here, I can do that with you happily. And by the end of it, if your pathways in the brain are really well developed to say yes, and they are at the moment because that's how you're conditioned, programmed, that's good news because that just means you can learn to say no, and I can work on that with you if you want.
But sure, we'll have a chat later.
Yeah.
No, it is something that I'd like to do because it's very difficult, I think, for myself as well, that I'm not good at necessarily understanding what's going on from the other side. I do a little bit, but then there's too many things that go on. that bit, that's what I'll do counselling for, just to try and
But I won't be
to
counselling
solve
you.
social situations.
Yeah, so it's not counselling. It's just we'll do a session. It's not, I won't be counselling you. I won't be saying, how do you feel about that? Nodding my head and
Yeah.
agreeing. It will be very straightforward. We'll practice saying no so that those pathways in the brain develop, that you're able to say no without feeling majorly awful about it.
Well, I'll say one thing that has definitely got a bit better,
Mm.
and you're not going to like me for this, but I had a. I keep saying this. I need to stop talking about the situation and leave it. But there was a situation where I had someone. Look at the way I look. I'm a bit awkward, a bit. There's some things, but I can be quite funny occasionally, a bit interesting. But the thing is, I had a really odd situation when I was in Italy doing a school. I had this individual go in, imitate what I do, then try and one up me. And then when I was at my worst, I had a stupid incident when I fell over my ankle in that school, and I was on crutches and all of that. This motherfucker tried to go around intimidating me, and then tried to square up to me. And then when he asked me for a favour, I ignored him. Then tried to turn the group against me. Then he tried to message me this year. What I did was a quick polite. I said, "Listen, mate, good to see you. Do hope all is well, but I don't want to know. Certain lines have been crossed. Certain behaviours have been done. I don't want to know." And I just blocked him again. But that's the situation I have to face. So I am getting better at that, and I have got rid of quite a lot of dodgy and scumbag individuals. But and I'll much rather have my peace than deal with these things. And look, with entertainment and all of that, you can build your own audience and people that like you. That's most. You know, I was speaking to a clown on the podcast. Most people never get to that point where they pay their rent with their art. So I mean, and that's so true. With social media, a lot of things going on. You don't need the. If you have enough audience of people that like what you do, that's all that matters.
Yeah, but there's
That's all
nothing.
you need.
I don't know why you said I wouldn't like what you were saying. I think walking away from somebody and saying, no, you couldn't be more wrong, or I don't agree with something, or I've had enough of this, and I wish you well, all the best, and then just go and block them. Absolutely, I block loads of people.
But yeah, that's something I got better at. And when
Good.
I'm in social groups, sometimes I worry about keeping the peace rather than situations where I need to probably say something, do something.
Mm,
And I've had that a couple of times where I've been in those situations, people taking advantage. I
mm.
process the situation and realise, hold on, I don't want to keep contact with this dickhead. They don't bring anything. They try and take things from you.
Yeah,
Why would I want to keep in contact with them?
sensible. Yeah.
But
Yeah, well, why
I
would
only do
you?
these things later on. I'm not good at doing these in a situation.
Okay. Well,
But
that can change
what
if
about
if you
yourself?
want it to. If you want to change it, we can work on it. And if you don't, it's grand. You've got a choice. Yeah.
But what about you in terms of like situation? You talk about people pleasing, and that's a big thing. A lot of us do struggle with saying no. What's been
Oh,
your sort of thing that has
yeah.
changed through like
I
talking to
didn't
people?
used to be able to. When I was in a really violent marriage, it's quite tricky to say no if you think you're going to get beaten up. So it's tricky. So if you're in that situation, I wouldn't say suddenly start saying no. You need an exit strategy first. But no, I didn't think I was worth very much. I had a very um, I had somebody that told me every day that I was hopeless and useless and worthless. I didn't even have a mirror in the house. I couldn't bear to look at myself. I was really quite, I'd say downtrodden's a horrible expression, but that's how it felt. So I've changed a lot, and I became quite ill, and then I got better, and then now I help other people feel better. So yeah, I have no problem saying no if I don't want to do something now. I say, yeah, thanks for the offer, but no, I have no problem at all saying no. And if I don't want to do something, I don't do it. If I don't want to go to a wedding, I don't go. I don't think I have to go. I don't have to go. That's fine. I don't want to go. I'm not going. I say it politely, but if I don't want to do something, no, lovely offer, but no. Um, and I do ask for help when I need help. Yeah. So
So can I ask a question on what you said there? Because
yeah, of
from
course.
some of the dodgy situations I've had, one
Mm,
thing that I'm looking to now is I'm going to write a little saying thank you for teaching me this and that. And
mm,
I'm thinking about that with when you come across scumbags, you learn things from what what things to bloody avoid next time you come across it. I
Hmm.
feel that's the caveat with all of these sort of situations. Like if you see a situation similar, or you see a certain type of, yeah, you become more educated in people. Well, it makes you
Yeah.
less naive.
Well, that's it.
That's the positive from these types of
Well,
situations.
it is. Like for me, those 36 people, if you imagine you have for 6 weeks, a day a week for 6 weeks, you get 36 people every 6 weeks in your life. I learnt from all of those people. All of them were teachers. I learnt as much from them as they did from me, and the course got better because of it. The course is called Confidence for Life. They got more confident, and I got better at delivering stuff that worked. So I don't now. I don't tolerate bullshit. I'm not really into bullshit. When you've been through a lot of shit in your life, and I have, you have these little detectors. They're like bullshit detectors. And you can see them, you feel them in a green room, you can feel them anywhere. And when somebody's full of it, you just know. And I don't particularly want to spend time with people that I don't want to spend time with. So it's like comedy is a job. And there are some lovely people in comedy. I've met some brilliant people. And there are some people that I don't spend time with socially. But where I can, I've helped people along the way. That's what I do, really, if I can. I did a really interesting, not a gig, I did some work in Tunisia a while ago, last year, with women who've had acid and other chemicals thrown in their face. Mm.
Oh,
And that was that was 10 days in, Tunisia. I did a bit of work with them. So I do interesting bits of work. I get to work with all kinds of people. I've worked with the BBC doing work with people at corporate level. I've worked with Boots, all sorts of companies. But in every organisation, there are going to be people who are quite poorly and quite unstable. And sometimes people can be really good at their job and very good at hiding how unwell they are. So anyway, yeah.
what do you love about helping people? Because I know one thing that think that people say about comedy, like Josephine Lacey says, when she does a joke that she's bored of saying,
Mm.
when she makes people laugh, she forgets it because she's getting the joy of making herself laugh and the audience laugh.
Mm.
So when you help others, do you get something similar, like in terms of you get
Oh,
like,
to see somebody be able to. I worked with a woman who was not able to say the word no. She was fearful of that word no and ran out of the room. And I did a piece of work with her. And years later, I saw her working at an airport, and she's behind a counter saying no and taking alcohol off people because they can't take alcohol through the scanner, when they reduce the alcohol amounts down. And she's given me permission to talk about her. Her name's Mary, and she got such a shock when she saw me. She said, "Who's this?" And it was Sancerre. It was wine that my brother-in-law really liked. For some reason, I thought if I bought it in Tesco's, they'd let it go through the scanner. What I like. Anyway, she said, "Whose is this?" And she's got a very distinctive accent. And I said, "It's mine." And she looked at me and she grabbed me across the conveyor belt thing that goes down. And she hugged me and we went down the conveyor belt together. She's in full uniform in security. And then she said, "This woman," I said, "Can you keep this downstairs?" And she said, "I'll ask my boss." And then she said to him, "This woman taught me to say no." And he went, "You taught her too well because she won't do any overtime." And
brilliant.
I know. Can you imagine the buzz for me? Like years later, I meet this woman and she's able to say no. That's part of it. And that first time she hugged me, like so, she held on to me, and I started to cry. I was so kind of emotional to see her doing this job. Even now, it gets me. And there was a woman at the bottom of the conveyor belt, and she said, "I'm upset they took my Jo Malone off me, her perfume." And she thought I was upset because I was losing the wine. Well, I was just emotional that this woman there was doing her job. I mean, it's quite moving. And years later, I can meet people. If I meet that woman again, she'd just say hello to me because she'll forget it was that work we did. So she's doing the work. I've just taught her. I've just given her a few skills, helped her get starting, and she's away in a hack. She's off, and it's lovely. And I've worked with thousands of people, and I meet people all over the shop. Sometimes it's difficult with comedy because people shut you down. I was doing a gig in Dublin in a Crunch. You know the Crunch in Dublin, nice gig. They give away ice cream. They used to anyway. I like ice cream. Anyway, I was in the middle of a set. I'm on stage. This man starts walking towards the stage, waving paper at me. I thought, oh my God, that looks like, I'll call him John. Looks like John. It can't be John because he lives in England. And I'm in Ireland. So I thought it can't be him, but it was him. He went, I've got a DLO form filling in and I need the vouchers. I need some help with the food bank. Can you do it now? Because I've got to get the boat back. He tracked me down to Ireland. He'd gone the boat over from Holyhead. I knew he wasn't going to be able to get the boat back that night, and I'm in the middle of a set. I said, I'll be off stage. Hang on a minute. I finished my set, came off. He hadn't got money for hotel. I ended up booking him into a hotel, and I'd take the morning off the next morning to help him with a form, and then find him somebody new in England to help him, so he wouldn't have to do that again. So it's tricky, you know, like, he needed practical help. He found my name on Instagram or whatever, and came to a gig. And that can happen. Sometimes I've had paedophiles. Sometimes I work in the community with paedophiles. Two of them turned up at a gig once, a gig in London, and they shouldn't have been in the same room, let alone sitting next to each other. I was in the middle of a set on Saturday afternoon. I know it was a shit show. But yeah, it's a bit tricky.
So, can you repeat that again? You've worked with
Paedophiles, yeah.
Oh, bloody hell.
Well, paedophiles aren't the strange. They're not that unusual. There's quite a lot in the world. They're not the odd people that you imagine them to be. They live in families and they're all over the shop. Yeah.
Oh. But there's no, like, oh, okay. Oh, bloody.
Is that a surprise to you, darling?
No, I mean, I've seen the Epstein stuff and I've seen I've seen a lot of programs, and there's all sorts of programs where they do show how dodgy people can be.
Oh, God, yeah. Well, there's an example of where it's linked up. There was a man in Nottingham I worked with. He didn't say the word no. He couldn't say the word no. He was so frightened of it. And he actually said to me, I can't say it. I don't think I'm allowed to. And he was in his 40s. And I went, no, you definitely can. And it transpired that he had been groomed as a child.
Oh.
And, yeah, he's on a course with me doing my Confidence for Life stuff. And then he discloses that he's been sexually assaulted as a child and groomed. And we ended up 6 months later. We didn't want to go straight away. I just said, when you're ready, we'll go to the police if you want. And we went. And we went round in a police car, and he pointed out to the door that had been green was now red, and they scratched away a bit of paint. They arrested the guy, and there was a big paedophile ring came down because of that.
Oh.
I've got newspaper clippings and all that sort of stuff from the time. But that man that I worked with, it was the learning to say no that kind of freed him up to be able to disclose and have someone help him tell what had happened and get help.
That's great. That's great. It's good that him. Yeah, that's good. But
to look at him, you wouldn't know any of that had happened. He just seemed like a quiet, frightened man.
Well, you would be, I think, if you had that happen to you.
And sometimes people can be angry men, and it's happened to them. So there's a lot of shit in the world, but there's other people trying to do something, to make a difference, I suppose. I'm lucky that I've had that impact, I'm lucky that I get to meet people and make a difference, I suppose. I see it like that.
With, so you're mentioning that, yeah, it's at least...
Sorry, is this a bit heavy for you, Marvin? I realise it might be.
No, it's fine. I have all sorts on here. I had Colin Higgins, who said that he suffered what you said there. He's a comedian, and he told me a bit about a story about how he had a friend, and him and them were able to get some of these dickheads put in prison.
Yeah.
So
It's a
That
great,
was
when you said, yeah, I can imagine. I mean, it's a nice feeling to think I've made a little bit of a difference. And for my guy that disclosed, he didn't want to come to court. So I went to court for him to tell him what had happened. And while I was there, this police officer came up while we were in the canteen and he said, did you make this happen? And I went, well, I went originally with the guy and he went, someone wants to thank you. And this man who was 19 now, he said, all my life I've looked over my shoulder. All my life I've been frightened and I didn't know why. And when he was a child, he was 2 at the time. He was in the garden and he'd been sexually assaulted by the same man who'd groomed my guy. And he said, and now, because of this, I now know what happened to me. Because what happened is they got the DNA connected up. My guy, once the guy was arrested, they checked the DNA and it matched what had happened to him in the garden without going into graphic details. It meant that I could ring up the lad who'd told me, call him Tom, John, whatever. And he came to the court and he got to meet this man who was able to thank him. It was such a nice experience to see him, to be able to say, and it meant that this guy who'd been through the trauma of having to go to the police and all that stuff he had to tell, he got some kind of, as the Americans say, he got some closure. And he went into court and the judge thanked him for being so brave. Yeah, it was quite something, really. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question? So, from what you've seen in terms of like working in mental health, is the saying "hurt people hurt people"?
Well, I think anybody can hurt people. I don't know if I'd go with hurt people hurt people. I'd have to think about it. I'm going to pass on it. I think hurt people can hurt people, but because somebody's been assaulted or like I've been thrown down the stairs and I've had to hide in cupboards and stuff. I've been hurt. I've never had a desire to do that to anybody else. So I think we can think that because somebody's been assaulted, they're going to go on and do the same. Not necessarily.
Now, so we've all don't know what to say now. So you mentioned that, but so you worked in mental health, but you wanted to do a mental health. You wanted to help comedians with the mental health.
Well, I
what
think that.
inspired?
Yeah, but I just think
you
that
to
would be
do that?
good. Yeah, well, I don't know who told you. Who did you say that to? Who told you that? I was thinking about doing it.
I heard from somewhere. I can't remember where, but I heard.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I mean, I have considered it, and I did offer it to Angel Comedy, and they didn't come back to me with it. But I think there's it would be useful for people to have some tools in their box, so that if they have rejection or if it doesn't go well, they're able to kind of manage their emotions and their feelings about it. And yeah, I think that's missing in comedy, and I think it's about kind of having some kind of support for comedians, because people can be quite vulnerable, and a lot of people doing comedy, they can be quite unwell, and they might go to alcohol or drugs where there are alternatives if they were able to kind of work on things. Yeah.
But that makes it worse, doesn't it? And then they become dependent on it, and it gets worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
What? So as we're chatting now from comedians, it is up and down though. It is very, very, very. Yeah, when you have a good gig, you feel amazing, but when you have a bad gig, it can really, especially if everyone else has done well, it destroys you mentally. But what would be your sort?
We can do, but it's recognising it's just a gig. That's it. It's just a gig.
What would be your advice to comics, as now we're talking about it, to handle what you've just said in terms of? So
what I do before I go on stage, and I recommend it to anybody who asks me people prepare in all kinds of ways. I prepare I put my feet on the ground, so my shoes are on. I've got my feet both on the ground, so I'm there. I remind myself where I am. I'm in the room. Here I am. I'm going to do the best I can. Say that to myself. And then I say to myself, you're smaller than a speck of sand, Margaret. You're tiny, you know, none of it matters. None of this matters. And then I go out and do the gig. That's what I do. Now, I do that because if I make the gig into this major thing, then it's just too big. It's just a gig. It doesn't matter. It really, none of it matters. And I want them to laugh, and I've prepared. I've got the set ready to go. I'm ready for the room. I've listened to what's happened in the room. I always like to be there early so I know what's happened before. So I don't go on and go, hi, how are we doing? Are you having a good time? Because people say that over and over again. I don't like hearing that. I don't do that. I want them to have fun, but I just remind myself, it doesn't matter, and it doesn't. And then afterwards, if it's gone well, great, and if it hasn't gone so well, I learn from it. But it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And if my being okay relies on the audience telling me I'm okay, there's something wrong. My being okay has to be about me being okay with myself. You can't rely on an audience telling me I'm good.
But it is quite funny in a way, isn't it? That's part of the motivation of some great comics, why they put so much work into it, because how much they need that, even though they're troubled outside.
I don't need, truthfully, I don't need it. And if I never did comedy again, I'd be okay with it. That's it. When, you know, I'm doing it, when I get fed up of doing it, I'll stop. It's all right.
What would you say makes you love the comedy, and how has working in mental health shaped your approach to comedy?
Okay, what was the first bit of the question? Sorry, what do I love about it?
So you mentioned that and you wouldn't, but there was something that makes you do it, that you love about it.
Well, I mean, like with the wheelchair set, for example, what I loved about it was I made people think and I made people laugh. And I know that one woman left her abusive husband when I talk about domestic violence on stage in that 5-minute set, about being pushed around. There was a reference to that. And I know she left her partner because of it, and I helped her with that. I love that. I love that a man thought I was so retarded, and then he realised that he's the one that is, because he's judged somebody just because they're in a chair with it. I think comedy, you can make people think differently, and I love to work on a piece. Like I'm doing a bit, and it's about not liking people who are Dutch. I don't know, people who are going to speak Dutch people. No, I don't dislike Dutch people. That is ridiculous. This is a bit about a woman who's picked a whole country not to like. But because people used to come up to me and go, oh, I don't like Dutch people either. So, oh, God, they haven't got it. Because I'm not going to do Israel-Palestine stuff. That's really what that's all about. It's about the ridiculousness of hating one group of people. Mad. So now I say, people who have annoyed me this week, Dutch people. To be clear, that is all Dutch people, because I'm inclusive. So I've made it even clearer to the audience. I've absolutely made it clear. So it's this woman on stage who's old. I know I'm old. I look old. I'm not like anybody else. Mostly people are a third of my age. Most people are in their 20s. I'm in my late 60s, mid 60s, whatever I am. I'm old. And I look different. And I'm wearing clothes that are like this floaty dress or whatever. I know how I look, and what they're thinking is, oh God, it's an old woman. I mean, people don't like old people. I wouldn't book an old person myself. So I get it. But I think comedy can make people think differently and believe things differently. I like that. And I like to work on a new bit, and when a new bit works, bloody brilliant. If a man heckles me, and often it's a man, I started saying, this is a nice bit, and I love saying this. If I need your help, I'll ask for it. In the unlikely event I need your help, I'll ask for it. I'm more likely to ask whether it's the Pope or Benjamin Netanyahu. They've annoyed me this week as well. But thank you. And then that's it. And I love to be able to just stop a man from just telling me stuff. Like sometimes men will do mansplaining while I'm on stage. They'll explain something to me while I'm on stage. I love to deal with that on stage. I like to talk about manspreading. The fact that men take up a lot of space on the underground. Their legs are so wide. Like, what the hell is going on? They've no compunction about taking up space. And we make ourselves smaller and they make themselves bigger. I can use comedy to make people think about that. I love that. Any of those things. Yeah, these are things I'm doing. Yeah. It's a bit rambling answer there, but good luck with editing that, darling.
No. So, if anyone wants to find out about you, how do they find out about you? And what is the biggest thing you've learned in life that you'd like to pass on to anyone that's listening?
I wanted to tell you some good gigs for people to go to. Have we got time? Okay, Aoife Dunn, Irish comedian. She's doing a show called Grief. I think it's called Good Grief. Amazing comedian. She's new, but she's blooming brilliant. She'll go places. Nathan Cassidy. I saw his show recently. Pirates or Piracy, I think it's called. Kelly Ford, Work in Progress. Bonkers. Mark Thomas, love him. And Josephine Lacey. Autism Mama. So all of them. Any of them. You can thank me later, darling. They're all good.
Okay. And anything that you'd like to plug apart from other comics? And
I don't know. I'm not really. I mean, I did the Dutch barn competition, and I did 2 minutes of comedy, and I got through. And on that day, one of my clients had died by suicide. I'd had such a shit morning. Yeah, I went to bed for 3 hours and I sobbed. I was dehydrated at the end of that. Anyway, I thought, right, I'll go back to bed. I can't cope with life. And then I remembered I'd got this gig. And I went there feeling really low. And I did 2 minutes of comedy and I got through. I went just because I'd be out of the house, to be honest. And I didn't have to think about what had happened. And I got through. And then Ricky Gervais shared a minute of my material on his page. Not on the Dutch Barn page, but on his page. And that really made a difference to me because I admire him. Particularly his work around Derek. You know, that program's amazing. He plays a person with learning disabilities. I think they've changed the name now to intellectual disability. You've got to keep up with the name changes and others. But oh God, yeah, so Dutch Barn, I'm in a competition. I don't even know if I'll go to the next round. But I like Dutch Barn. Yeah, and I didn't really like that before, but it's quite a nice drink with Ribena even. I came home and drank some of that.
That sounds good.
Yeah, but that's not really plugging anything, is it? I haven't really got nothing major to plug.
Okay.
I just need to ring my in, really. Yeah.
Okay. No worries. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed Mags. Hope you enjoyed our conversation. We've got a lot of great episodes coming up. Make sure you give this podcast a review on Apple or Spotify. Also, we're speaking to Kate Kopsick. We've arranged a meeting with her. We've got Paul Savage coming up. Let's see what happens. And we're likely to have a comedian all the way from Romania coming on the podcast.
Wow.
But I hope you guys have enjoyed it. And I will see you guys soon. There it is.